I want to bring in Rebecca Walser. Rebecca, just your thoughts on the market for a moment. Buoyed earlier this week by Jay Powell, coming back to earth a little bit today with the jobs report. It's been a tough year. What are you seeing?
Charles, I'm just seeing global uncertainty. That's why we can't get our feet under this, right? We just don't know which direction we're going because we don't know which direction the whole world is going to go. So I'm in the camp of very bearish, unfortunately, still. I know that you're looking at a September of next year based on your 311 days, but I think that is a little closer than that, unfortunately.
The recession. You think the recession starts?
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, though. Recession, you could argue, I bet, that half of America is in their own personal recession already, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, you could. Absolutely. And I think people get upset when they say, when I'm not in a recession, it feels like I'm in a recession. Right. What's going on here?
Right. You don't want to go to a supermarket and say, there's no recession, right? Go on CNBC and say that, but don't go to a supermarket. Hey,
exactly.
How about navigating this market, though? How are you doing that? I just had a great conversation with Victoria Fernandez. It feels like investors are a little bit more understanding, having seen so many crazy things in the last 10, 20 years. How are you navigating this?
I think for our practice, we're really seeing more of a global changeover with the BRICS nations moving and the 388 tons of gold that was moved in the Q3, which was the largest since 1967 when we were still on the gold standard, moving it to the east to back currencies with gold again. So I feel like we're moving to multipolarity and they're going to force our hand to move to asset-backed currencies again, which would be a big problem for the United States as we're a debtor nation and we always run trade deficits. And so that is a really alarming trend, Charles. And obviously they want, we're already in beta testing for Fed now, right. The digital dollar. So all of these things are coming to a point, and we're going to see which way it goes, whether we're going to CBDCs globally or we are actually going back to hard assets again. And I think it's going to be a battle.
You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to even believe some of it might have been orchestrated. I love your podcast. You've got one recently titled Freedom, Federalism, and FTX Contagion. And you say it's all coming to a head. I think you were alluding to it a little bit there, but connect the dots on how the end game to all of this might look.
Well, the end game for America is a little bit, if you just really quickly think about a gold-backed currency again in the West, or the East rather, and all the BRICS nations, and we've got a lot of other nations moving that direction. What does that do to China always taking our fiat dollars that aren't backed by hard assets? How do they keep accepting our dollars in a deficit situation every year when they are now asset-backed? That's going to be a really big problem. So that is going to force our hand, which is why I see that we're just not going to have the debt fiat currencies that we've had forever, because we're changing. The Federal Reserve came about in 1913. We had stuff before that. We will have stuff after that. And I think that we are going to see a forcing of the hand of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a negative cash flow now, Charles. We are already, pretty insolvent on how much 8.6 trillion of total, holdings versus only about $38 billion of actual capital. Mm-hmm. So that's about a 200-to-1 leverage ratio. That's bad. But once we started going into negative cash flow, which is what we have, because they're paying federal funds overnight rates to deposits, right? But they're only getting in the 8.6 trillion on their assets, or paying, that's when we bought all those assets during 2020 when the interest rates were a lot lower. Yeah. So you can't sustain negative cash flow at your central bank for very long. It's a big problem.
And then you wonder who's going to fund the government too, right? China doesn't buy our bonds. The Fed's not buying our bonds. Japan doesn't buy our bonds. And they're not getting anything back from the Federal Reserve anymore. It's a heck of a conundrum. Rebecca, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Charles.
All right, folks, coming up, my takeaway on Pantone.